In this video, I'm going to provide you with some of my thoughts and opinions about the coaching staff that Jesse Minter is still acquiring and putting together in Baltimore. This isn't a film study video, I'll tell you that up front. Again, it's a discussion of the hirings, but more importantly, the most recent announcement, or one of the most recent, that Anthony Weaver is going to be the defensive coordinator in Baltimore. I think it's a great development. Let me talk about that one initially. It's exciting because, A, he's a defensive line guy. Jesse Minter, I think, has already done enough, for me at least, as far as the DB coaching situation. Mike Mickens as the secondary coach and pass game coordinator on the defensive side. Also retained Tyler Sanducci as the inside linebacker coach. And then brought in a good friend, or apparently trusted advocate, former Navy defensive coordinator P.J. Volker, who I think has focused on inside linebackers in the past. I thought I saw an announcement that he was going to be the safety coach. But anyway, he worked with Minter at 2 stops before. I could be wrong about what position he'll focus on, inside linebacker versus safeties. I know he was at Navy as the defensive coordinator. Bringing Weaver on as the DC, presumably to coach and handle the D-line as well, that's a win if you ask me. He called plays in Miami the last 2 years. I have watched some of their film, the Dolphins defensive film, because I'm doing a film study on one of their rookies, safety Dante Trader. Some of you may know he's from Maryland. I actually know a few members of his family, not friends or anything like that, just been around them during coaching clinics, coaching days in the spring season, and I want to support him as a Maryland guy and a former 2-sport athlete in college. Anyway, so I've watched some of their film. I'm not necessarily privy right now to break it down and present it in this video as far as Weaver goes. Of course, he was drafted here, right, and then coached in Baltimore, I think, from 2021 to 2023. That's huge, if you ask me, for a lot of reasons. Number one, he knows some of the players, right? Guys like Matabike, Travis Jones. In addition, the front office, and this I might not be able to connect this, or perhaps some of you will disagree. The front office brought back a connection to that 2023 team. It's a coach in this case, right? Not a player, but we've already brought in that mentality, I think, with the Jesse Minter, Mike McDonald comparison. Being as the way they run the defense is similar. In addition, they handed off the defensive coordinator job in Michigan to each other over a 3-year period, culminating, I think, Minter being the defensive coordinator in 2023 when they won the national championship. There's a lot to like about Minter and Weaver working together. Bringing back someone who coached the D-line and has the right mentality, meaning on the defensive side, the expectation that Weaver is going to bring, as well as Minter, I think is incredibly high. Yeah, the style of defense, a return to that, we want to stop the run on early downs, get after the quarterback on 3rd and 6, alter or shift or change coverages post-snap. Zach Orr tried to do those things. We just couldn't get after the quarterback at all in 2025. Now, the weird thing is in 2024, Orr's first season here, or his first year as a DC, I should say, the Ravens have 53 sacks. That was without Weaver, and that was without McDonald. And then that number shrunk to 30 this past year. The Matabike, situation obviously had an impact. Bisciotti mentioned 2 important factors, or facets, I should say, of the Ravens game that needed to improve: the pass rush and the offensive line. For me, even if Weaver weren't going to be the DC, if he was just going to be a D-line coach, getting someone back with that level of experience, expectations, I expect that we're not only going to be disruptive against the run, but we're also going to get after the quarterback. I think both Minter and Weaver will have extremely high standards and expectations. And as far as getting after the quarterback goes, but being sound on the defensive side, I think it goes just beyond the firing of Harbaugh, kind of, which was related to the Zach Orr issue. It's entirely possible that Weaver was one of the guys being considered, and we know that he was after Mike McDonald left in 2023, but the progression of the defense got worse into 2025. You would think that proven coaches between the 24 and 25 seasons would assist or help with preparing the defense. It's my suspicion that Harbaugh was very involved in that. Now, Weaver's defense in Miami also dipped from 24 to 25, okay? His first season there as a defensive coordinator, they were 10th in the league in points per game allowed at 21.4, And then that swelled to almost 25 points per game this past season. I do like this dynamic. Minter and Weaver have both called plays twice per season against the likes of, Joe Brady and Josh Allen, Andy Reid and Mike Mahomes, or Patrick Mahomes, excuse me, Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels. Twice a year, they have faced those caliber, those specific pairings, I guess I should say. In addition to, they have direct knowledge, obviously, of Jim Harbaugh and Mike McDaniel as coaches, right? And that's another potential playoff foe in the AFC with the Chargers. In short, I think it worked out great. Although personally, at some point, I think I would like to see Weaver move on to a head coach position. We know that's going to happen. So 1 year from now, he'll be getting interviews again. I think he should have either gotten a job already or be really close to it. There's just so many retreads that get in this process. For me, Stefanski's one of them that sticks out. But most of the time, these teams are going with the younger, offensive-minded guys. The Ravens and Bisciotti went with a younger DC, Minter, who I think is 42, and then an even less proven guy, or younger, I guess you could say, in Declan Doyle, the offensive coordinator, who's only 29. I like what Minter's done so far. To spin this or focus on the offense for a moment, if we accept that it's going to look similar to Chicago's in 2025, and he had spent, I think, 6 years or maybe 5 with Sean Payton prior to that, I happen to be very excited about the type of offense that they ran there in Chicago, in Detroit prior to that, but also that Doyle had exposure to with the Broncos and with Sean Payton even prior to that. Because it's the under center run game, something that will not rely on Lamar Jackson to create space off the option keeper. It's very creative, and I think the plays are called at the right time. Now, of course, Ben Johnson was the guy calling plays in 2025 in Chicago. Cole Kmet, on a podcast recently, I think about 3 or 4 days ago, talked about the preparation and how directly involved Doyle was, and in fact that he ran most of the meetings. My suspicion is that Ben Johnson would have been entirely comfortable with a guy like Doyle calling the plays. It's just that Ben Johnson's so great at it. It's just that he is so talented in finding those weak spots in each and every situation. So from that standpoint, I appreciate the hiring of Doyle, as well as their reliance in Chicago on running outside zone concepts. Of course, the O-line coach, Dwayne Ledford, I think he's a big upgrade from George Warhop. And down in Atlanta, they ran a lot of outside zone. I think the Ravens this past year were like 5th or 6th in total outside zone concepts, outside zone or stretch, run over the course of the season. The comparison from Ledford to Warhop, to me, we kept Warhop 1 year too long, maybe 2. And now Monken's rehired him in Cleveland, so we'll see how that works out. It didn't work here. All indications for Ledford, and he also brought in an assistant offensive line coach, I think Sean Flaherty. He was in Atlanta. They were in Atlanta together, so they know what they're doing. We've got to improve the O-line dramatically and get to the point where it's a strength for this offense. I recommend you do a little bit of research on the Bears' offensive line transformation that occurred about 11 months ago, March of 2025. 51 days after they hired Ben Johnson, they traded for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson in a span of like 2 or 3 hours. And then the next day, the first day of free agency, they were able to sign Drew Dahlman, the starting center. I know that quality O-linemen don't go on trees, but we shouldn't have been, under Warhop and Monken and Harbaugh, we shouldn't have been focusing on developing inferior talent and kind of forcing them into a starting role. And then along with that, coaching said inferior talent to rely on those really wide hands. Either Warhop was coaching that with Falele, or he was allowing it. Either way, it worked out to our detriment. Ledford comes here very highly regarded. He's only 49 years old. And the key for me is he wasn't sitting around with no job on his resume like Warhop was during the 2023 season. Ledford played in the NFL, I think, up until like 2006, 2007. He was not on the Super Bowl winning team in 2009. for the Saints. He actually played high school ball with a guy that I went to school with. But in anyway, what's interesting here, I think this is we should consider this an upgrade. I know Warhop's reputation is great. There are people who hold him in high regard even still. But by the time we got him, he was just not able to produce anything like a top 5 or even top 10 offensive line in Baltimore. I think this is a huge upgrade, and I've only watched 2 Falcons games so far to research the talent level that he, Ledford, and Flaherty, that they both had to work with on the offensive line. To compare it to what we put in front of Lamar Jackson in 2024 and 2025, it looks comparable to me with a couple of holes. So it remains to be seen how it will work out. We all expect, or we all hope, I should say, to have at least 2 upgrades from a personnel standpoint on the offensive line. Shifting to something else on the offense, somehow the Steelers running back coach, Eddie Faulkner, is coming to Baltimore as well. I think he had coached with Ledford before at maybe 1 or 2 stops in college. I don't really know a whole lot about him. There's not really much to extrapolate or observe for me. I do really like the Mike Mickens acquisition. He was a great player at the University of Cincinnati. And then I think he stuck on like 2 or 3 practice squads for a year or so after getting drafted in the 7th round. Really good player in college. He's now spent, I believe, 14 years coaching DBs exclusively in college. The last 5, obviously, at Notre Dame. He was held in really high esteem as well. Spent a lot of time working with Marcus Freeman. Obviously, now moves up to the NFL for the first time. Mickens and P.J. Volker each have previous ties to Minter. I think Minter was a grad assistant at Cincinnati when Mickens played there. And then after Mickens gets done with his playing career, college and then the NFL for a year or 2, they coached together at Indiana State, maybe like 2012, 2013. Minter got his way up to the NFL, faster than Mickens did, and also faster than P.J. Volker. I think this is an impressive staff. There's still some gaps there, don't get me wrong. He did retain Santucci, the inside linebacker coach. I think Randy Brown, the special teams coach, is also returning. There's as I record this Wednesday morning, there's definitely some gaps that persist. I do see a strong collection of talent with a diverse set of experiences. Some guys all college until now, Volker and Mickens, but they're on the same side of the ball as experienced NFL coaches like Weaver and Jesse Minter, 2 guys that have called plays against high-level competition. One underreported element for me, as far as those 2 guys, Minter and Weaver, is that they've both had to recently game plan against Lamar and our current personnel from a position player standpoint. So they would have knowledge of game plan tendencies, perhaps even weaknesses of our scheme and some of our players in a way that maybe they wouldn't reveal it in a meeting, like, hey, this is what you're no good at, but this is what we were trying to do in coaches meetings. This is what we were trying to do. This is why. And so they could hopefully build drills and progression of things in camp or in the off season to maybe address some of those weaknesses that they saw, some of those perceived weaknesses from their perspective, when they were calling plays for the Chargers and the Dolphins, respectively. Maybe I didn't explain that well, but the idea here for me is that guys who were in another NFL organization before and have some idea of what game plans looked like to try to limit our offense, and in particular to attack our offensive line. Another thing to say about Weaver, and I know he interviewed in a few places, there's this element here that we could kind of reflect back on the decision after the 2023 season. I mean, when Mike McDonald leaves for Seattle, Harbaugh chooses to hire Orr. I think it's on February 1st, maybe February 2nd, something like that. After a whole bunch of other defensive coaches had left already and been hired away, except Weaver. If I remember this correctly, I looked this up maybe Monday night, so it's been a little bit. The timing of it was Orr being named the DC here in Baltimore, and then a day later, or maybe 2 days later, Weaver's hired as the DC in Miami to replace Vic Fangio. Talking about the other side of the ball, to kind of finish this up here, and then I will give you an idea of some film study stuff that I'm going to have out at some point soon. Doyle is the one that I'm really interested in watching more film of and trying to understand things. Because of the scheme, his experience working with Sean Payton and Ben Johnson, and the level of preparation that Cole Kmet and others, Ben Johnson himself, have assigned or said, indicated that Doyle brings to the table. To me, that link to Ben Johnson and Sean Payton is exciting, and it makes me think we're going to see drastic changes in terms of under center versus shotgun play tendencies. And one thing, you may not know this, one thing that Ben Johnson always makes sure that he does, this is, dating back to his time in Detroit, he'll run the same concepts or similar as he can make it, whether the quarterback is under center or in the shotgun. To me, I look forward to seeing Lamar being under center more and either handing the ball off, faking it on play action, or just a straight drop back pass. I know the data for his time under center as far as pass plays is overwhelming. And I do appreciate it and respect it because I've wanted to see it more for a number of seasons. I think dating back to like 2021, 2022, I know I was doing videos talking about him being under center more, and I know many people in the comment section had their own ideas where they thought it would be effective. It's something like 164 pass plays over the course of 3 seasons. That's a small sample size, really. Talking about 50 per year, basically. A little more than 50. I do think it's worthy data because of how positive it is. Somewhere in the realm of like 16, 17 touchdowns and only 1 interception. It would be interesting for me as well, if whoever could parse out that data, to see the number of sacks that Lamar has taken, or even pressures on under center concepts compared to the shotgun. What I would anticipate or predict is that we probably get a higher percentage of sacks and a higher percentage of pressures out of the shotgun compared to under center concepts. Maybe we're asking a little bit too much for someone to be able to find that. I'm not exactly sure how. I guess I could go to NFL Pro at some point and try to find that data myself. I think in the last 2 years, 24 and 25, we kind of were a little unrealistic with our expectations for Lamar. I'm talking about from a coaching staff standpoint. From a personnel standpoint, we need to address the offensive line. We know that, but we've addressed it for coaches. On the coaches' side, the appeal to me for the under center movement is something I want to see more of. It's something I want to focus more on and do videos on. And in fact, I've got probably 8 or 10 commonly used under center play action concepts that Caleb Williams ran this year with the Bears. Jared Goff ran previously in Detroit, and in fact still did. That Lamar Jackson has film of as well. So it would turn into a pretty long film study video, showing plays from all 3 locations, Detroit, Chicago, and Baltimore. I think it's also worth going over the data from a Caleb Williams standpoint. I mentioned this in another video. He was sacked, I think, 68 times in his rookie year, and then only 24 in this past season in 2025. Yes, they made drastic improvements on the offensive line from a talent standpoint. That plays a role. I wonder, I'm asking, speculating, how much the under center shift contributed to that decrease as well. You're welcome to let me know what you think of that as a possible factor. Of course, both of them are part of the formula. I have no idea what the under center versus shotgun data looks like for Lamar or Caleb Williams. What memory tells me is that we had a whole lot more trouble when we're in the shotgun, particularly 11 personnel looks, trying to protect Lamar Jackson. Basically, when we weren't in a 21 personnel grouping or even 22, and Pat Ricard was used as a pseudo tight end / offensive lineman. Actually, I want to do this another way as it relates to Lamar, Doyle, and the under center run / pass game. Let's think of it this way. Let's project forward into 2026. And Lamar plays 17 games. And he only gets sacked 24 times in 17 games. Actually, I think that's an impossibility. Because if Lamar's only sacked 24 times all season, that means our greatest weapon, Lamar, he's given time and space to attack the defense, and by definition, we're going to win a lot of games. He probably, in that scenario, wouldn't play 17 games because we wouldn't need him on the field in Week 18. Hopefully that makes sense. The implication here, or what I'm trying to get across, we would win enough games if he's not sacked or pressured often so that he could sit in Week 18 because he's able to He's able to operate in the pocket because he's protected. And that's going to make us more efficient and more dangerous on offense as well. So those numbers for Caleb Williams, I just picked 24 because that's the number of times Caleb Williams was sacked in 2025. Lamar is, even more elusive and quick, although Caleb Williams got a great first step too. My point is, I think Doyle and Ledford have already recognized how much stress there was on Lamar in 2025. Even though Ledford, doesn't have any connection to him at all, I believe they'll ensure that it doesn't happen again next year. It's just a fact that defenses cannot allow Lamar Jackson time and space. Otherwise, he will beat you, whether it's with his arms or his legs. There is not a thought in my mind that he won't or can't be the same guy we saw before and that we saw in like week 1 against the Bills. He was incredibly quick, dangerous, sharp, and lethal while delivering the football against the Bills. If we protect him and we create a scheme that gives him time and space, he'll be that same guy over the course of 17 or probably actually 16 games. We could sit him again in week 18 like we've done before. I'm just not worried about Lamar Jackson and whether or not he's capable of performing to the same level he did in 2023 and 2024. I know 24 was, a historic season statistically, really only matched by a few quarterbacks ever. If you get time today or whenever, go look up top 10 lists for a single season by a quarterback in the NFL. Some of these jokers, and of course some of those lists were compiled before 2024, but some of them don't even include Lamar, which is wild. We all know he had 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in 2024, led the league in touchdown percentage, also led the league in yards per attempt, led the league in a couple of other, advanced metrics categories. In addition, 4th highest all-time quarterback rating for a quarterback in a single season, 119.6. Aaron Rodgers holds the first 2. I have a video that's planned, and I've already kind of worked on a little bit on the under center pass game. And it's going to focus on Bears film with Caleb Williams this season. How that relates to Lamar is I have found some of the exact same concepts Lamar running during his time here under Todd Monken. Previously when operating under center, it seems clear to me that Minter has identified something many of us talked about dating back to 21 or 22. Lamar has the skill. Lamar obviously has the skills to operate in any offense. Any system, he's going to succeed. He's won an MVP, right, with 2 different offensive coordinators. Really, should be 3. Having said that, there's nothing wrong with safeguarding your greatest asset. Lamar's also got a huge salary. It's something that's a little frustrating to hear people talk about. There's almost this like shit-brained idea that we have to allow Lamar to do everything. We have to put everything on his shoulders. We have to expect him, to use a basketball analogy, to just beat people one-on-one because we're giving him so much money. It doesn't make sense. It's like having, a $300,000 car and not only saying, all right, I got to drive it to work every day, whether it's, rain, snow, sleet, or sun, but you're also going to use that car to do the recycling every Saturday morning or take a 5-hour trip once a month to go see family. It's silly, and it's an indication that sometimes people talk about Lamar or any football team, and they're just not operating in good faith. But to go even a step further and be more direct, there's a lot of people that are incapable of understanding football in the first place, so their, quote, takes or perspectives that flow from it are going to oftentimes be wayward because they literally don't know what they're talking about, let alone when you have one player, quarterback obviously, who takes up such a high percentage of your salary cap. I think it stands to reason. It's obvious to me that he should be protected in an intentional manner, just like you would park that $300,000 car in the garage every night. You wouldn't leave it exposed to the elements. I think it's pretty clear that the Ravens were remiss in 24 and 25 by relying on certain guys on the offensive line. In my opinion, Minter has identified it. Ledford and Doyle look like hires to swing that, actually to just refocus the offense towards putting Lamar in a position to succeed. Because if Lamar succeeds, then the team does, right? We're going to play a better brand of defense under Minter. I think he believes he will control that. Whether we allocate, first, second, third round talent towards the defense at all. John Harbaugh did not safeguard the offensive side of the ball at all recently, and that's one of the reasons why I feel comfortable saying the Doyle and Ledford hirings for me look just as powerful, just as potentially fun to watch and exciting as Weaver and Minter on the other side. I know that Weaver and Minter, have more accomplishments, obviously, as play callers, and now Minter is our head coach. I don't think there's an imbalance between our defensive staff and our offensive staff, but I recognize that, other people may have a different opinion. If you enjoyed this commentary, please let me know in the comment section, number one. Like I said, I do have a film study on the Bears under center play action game, using some stuff from Lamar executing similar concepts coming up that hopefully would be out like a Friday morning or perhaps Saturday morning. I've just spent too much time at this point watching film of the Super Bowl from a Seahawks perspective against the Patriots, trying to preview that game, as much as possible, what we might see there. Finally, if you think other Ravens fans would enjoy, this discussion / commentary on the coaching staff as it stands right now, Wednesday morning, February 4th, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.